Hi, this is Steve with Thresher Media Group. Welcome to When You're Ready to Listen. This podcast is dedicated to exploring the truth about God, things you may not have understood, may not have been taught, or quite frankly, had a very hard time believing. And since our entire relationship with God rests on believing, it is important we learn how to separate the truth from the many lies and fictions that abound within the religion of Christianity. So when you're ready to listen, tune in and discover a pathway to freedom, encouragement, life, and hope. In our last podcast, we finished our discussion on whether God can have his mind changed. And we dove into the plan A that never changes, as well as the issue of sin and how God relates to sin in comparison to how mankind relates to sin, especially those within the religion of Christianity. If you missed it, I encourage you to go back and listen. It might just change how you view so many of the lies that we have been told. Let's now move on in the narrative. Job's three friends, aka the boys. Job chapter 2, verse 11 through 13. Now when Job's three friends heard of all the evil that had come upon him, they came each one from his own place, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. And they made an appointment together to come to sympathize with him and comfort him. When they lifted up their eyes at a distance and did not recognize him, they raised their voices and wept. And each of them tore his robe, and they threw dust over their heads towards the sky. Then they sat down on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights, no one speaking a word to him, for they saw that his pain was very great. In chapter 1, we discussed that Job was likely located in the northeastern region of Edom, possibly east of the Jordan River and south of the land of Canaan, which is in modern-day Jordan. It's right beneath the Dead Sea. Some believe it might have been way north in what we know as Assyria. However, Lamentations chapter 4, verse 21 references the land of Uz in connection to Edom. Rejoice and be glad, O daughters of Edom, you who dwell in the land of Uz. Eliphaz, he was from Teman, which was a very important city in Moab, which was east of the Dead Sea and north of Edom. In terms of the distance, he was relatively close to Uz. His name means, my God is gold, and Teman means southward. As for Bildad the Shuhite, it's not clear where he is from, and it all depends on the presupposition that one makes about the date of these events, whether pre-Abrahamic or post-Abrahamic, or, the same time as Abraham. A long-standing view is that Bildad came from the middle Euphrates and the state of Sheol, which was in Mesopotamia. If that's the case, Bildad would have had the longest trip to take, and it would likely have taken him months to take this journey following the Euphrates River north into Assyria, and then traveling south to reach the land of Uz. However, if these events occurred, post-Abraham, it's possible that Bildad could be a descendant of Shua, a son of Abraham and Keturah, whom Abraham married, and this was after Sarah died. We just don't really know about the whereabouts of Bildad. However, we do know that his name means confusing love, and Shuhu means wealth. Together, confusing love with wealth. Zophar appears to be from a Canaanite city named Naamah, which was located slightly northwest of what we know as Jerusalem. It's in the lowland region known as Judah. The city is mentioned in Joshua 15:41 as being assigned to the tribe of Judah. Zophar's name means sparrow, and Naamah means pleasantness. The sparrow from pleasantness, which makes sense if he's from the area of Judah. These three friends somehow coordinated over vast distances and planned to come and sympathize and comfort Job. However, as we learned in the book of Revelation, when it comes to spiritual matters, intentions are for, let's just say that what these three friends ultimately did had little to do with what they had intended to do. Perhaps their names gives a clue as to why their desire to sympathize and comfort Job did not turn out as they had planned. My God is gold, confusing love, with wealth, the sparrow from pleasantness. I mean, based on these names and the arguments which they will soon make to Job, these guys were from the 1%, those few who live prosperous and successful lives. And it is this perspective that inverts their understanding of Yahweh. Still, it is impressive that these three friends set out and traveled to meet Job. The beginning of their time with Job was more than impressive. I mean, they were so shocked and dismayed at what they saw, they did not even say a word. They just wept and cried for Job. This gives us a picture of how bad Job was physically afflicted by the Satan. I mean, these friends did not recognize him. They tore their robes, a sign of mourning, and sat down on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights, with no one speaking a word to Job. They saw that his pain was very great. I mean, it is hard to imagine that these three men were so attuned to Job's pain that they did not say a word for 7 days or 7 nights. It's crazy. And it's hard not to notice the biblical numerology with the use of the number 7, which, 7 is the number standing for completeness. 7 days is 7 nights, a complete time of mourning, more than anyone could ask for or expect. It was a beautiful sacrifice in friendship and compassion. And this must have meant so much to Job, made him feel cared for and loved, especially after his encounter with his wife. At the same time, this display of mercy and compassion made the next part of the story that much more difficult to stomach. Job chapter 3. Job speaks. Job 3 verse 1. Afterward, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. To our surprise, the word we have translated as cursed is not the inversion of barak, to bless, as we've found out through chapters 1 and 2, but Job used kalal. It might be best translated, afterward, Job opened up his mouth and belittled the day of his birth. Job must have felt safe enough with the comfort and support of his friends that he dared to speak, albeit, as we'll find out, his confidence in his friends was premature. It seems almost like a setup. They acted coy, quiet, and mature. But we'll find that as soon as Job gives this vent to his grievances, they come after him like a group of honey badgers, or as if something had just possessed them, causing them to now be aligned together against Job. During my darkest days, when it seemed as if everything in the universe was aligned against me, including God, I found I needed the opportunity to express my thoughts, my feelings, my complaint, and my anguish. It did not matter if what I was saying was technically right. I mean, I still needed to say it. There was too much churning and turning within me that if I did not give it vent, I was sure I would lose my mind. And like Job, I learned very quickly who I could trust and who I could not. With that said, I find it hard to blame those who could not handle what I was going through or the things I said. Most people simply are not ever prepared to handle a person whose life has been suddenly ripped apart, turned inside out and upside down, seemingly for no reason. I mean, people are not trained to handle the tragedy of ones they love, and so they feel this weird need to find a reason for it all. Everyone was confused as to what was happening, why it was happening, and quite frankly, it seems people were scared to death that something similar could happen to them. Of course, they wanted no part of that. Everyone's presuppositions about God, Christianity, suffering, the issue of sin, evil, demons, angels, what is good and bad, etc., it was all being challenged. And there was no nice box of religion in which to stuff things into. Despite this confusion, it seemed everyone was convinced, unified on one thing. I must be the problem. Somewhere, somehow, I had not been obeying God, and I was getting my just comeuppance. I was constantly fending off comments about my pride, my hidden sins, and my arrogance to challenge years of religious tradition, and so on. I mean, it drove me nuts, and I dug in for the fight, not giving an inch, not giving in to that Christian reasoning, which of course just reinforced everybody's accusations about my pride and arrogance. I may not have fully understood what God was doing, but I knew it was not about him punishing me for my wrong. Though there had been plenty of wrongs, believe me, plenty of reasons for punishment. The sins of humanity, though, are simply a fact of life, and there is no one who can escape its grip. Yet somehow I knew this was all about his promise, that he was going to show me how much he loves me. But it seemed that no one else had space for that understanding. They were all looking to sin to be the reason. And in a sense, they were not wrong. But God was not focused on my sins of humanity. He had already made provision for those. Before my life blew up, he spoke to me from Psalm 103 and confirmed that he does not deal with me according to my sin, nor does he reward me according to my iniquity. As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us. He wanted me to accept this as a fact of life. He wanted me to believe in what he accomplished for me on the cross and rest in it and not let anyone convince me otherwise. He wanted me to have a clear mind that was not consumed with guilt, penance, duty, and shame. He wanted me to understand that he was working to save me from the sin, the unbelief that is rooted in not knowing him intimately, in not knowing his name. Despite the pushback from those in my life, I still needed to verbally process what I was experiencing and what I was learning. I mean, the whole experience was ethereal. Even though I may have been talking to a friend or a relative, it was almost as if at the same time I was in the heavenly courtroom standing before God, making my arguments about fairness, justice, mercy, compassion, and my definition of love. I would beg for my words to be heard and for God to step in and stop all the pain and terror. I would beg for God to prove his love for me, which means I just wanted him to show me what I could do to stop the terror and put an end to my suffering. You see, even though I knew the truth, I was also wrestling with my if-then God and the religious lies that were ingrained in my soul. These idolatrous beliefs were the very reason for my suffering, and they were what God was saving me from. But as I argued, as I vented, the heavenly court sat silent without reply, kind of like Job's friends. And this, I believe, is what Job experienced. Yes, he was talking to Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, but in his own ethereal reality, he was expressing his complaint before the heavenly courtroom, which similarly sat silent without reply. I'm confident Job too could feel the cold chill of that heavenly silence like I did. For me, there was nothing comforting in the silence and nothing assuring. In fact, it just hurt my feelings. And honestly, it made me angry. Let's see how it impacts Job. Next, let's read how Job belittled the day of his birth. Job chapter 3, verses 2 through 26. And Job said, "Perish the day on which I was caused to being born, and the night which said, a boy is caused to be conceived. That day it is commanded to be darkness. Let not God above care for it, nor light shine on it. Darkness and black gloom are commanded to claim it. A cloud settle on it. The blackness of the day terrify it. That night darkness be seizing it, not to rejoice among the days of the year, not come into the number of the months. Behold, let that night be barren. Let no joyful shout enter it. Let those pierce it who curse the day, who are prepared to rouse Leviathan. Let the stars of its twilight be darkened. Let it be forced to wait for light, but have none. And let it not see the breaking dawn, because it did not shut the doors of the belly, or be caused to hide trouble from my eyes. Why did I not die from the womb, come forth from the belly and expire? Why did the knees receive me, and why the breasts that I should suck? For now I would have lain down and been quiet. I would have slept then. I would have been at rest with kings and with counselors of the earth. who rebuilt ruins for themselves, or with princes who had gold, who were caused to fill their houses with silver, or like a miscarriage which is discarded. I would not be as infants that never saw light. Therefore the wicked cease from waging, and there the weary are at rest. The prisoners are at ease together. They do not hear the voice of the taskmaster. The small and the great are there, and the slave is free from his master. Why is light given to him who suffers, and life to the bitter of soul, who long for death, but there is none, and dig for it more than for hidden treasures, who rejoice greatly and exult when they find the grave? Why is light given to a man whose way is hidden, and whom God has hedged in? For my groaning comes at the sight of my food, and my cries pour out like water. For what I fear comes upon me, and what I dread befalls me. I am not at ease, nor am I quiet, and I am not at rest, but turmoil comes. After 7 days of sitting in silence, Job was about to burst out of his skin. He delivers his first speech in 3 parts. First, he curses the day he was born. Second, he curses his birth. Third, he wonders why God won't just let him die already. I mean, this may all sound overly dramatic, but remember, this is a man who in one day lost his children, his servants, his possessions, and even the heart of his wife. And after sitting in that reality for a while, then he suddenly lost his health. I mean, Job is in such bad physical shape that even his closest friends did not recognize him. It is hard for us to intellectually, much less emotionally, connect to the extent of this man's suffering. But as we go through his words and his poetic expressions, you might want to ask God to connect you to his heart, and if you dare, to feel as he felt. As Job said, perish the day on which I was caused to being born, and the night which said, a boy is caused to be conceived. That day is commanded to be darkness. Let not God above care for it, nor light shine on it. Darkness and black gloom are commanded to claim it. A cloud settle on it. The blackness of the day terrify it. That night, darkness be seizing it. Not to rejoice among the days of the year, not come into the number of the months. Job chapter 3, verse 3 through 6. Who knows? Maybe it was Job's birthday, so he just started his discourse by cursing this day as being a day that is not worthy of the light and a day that is not worthy of joy. For all he cared, that day should be forgotten and skipped over altogether. The use of the commands, the Hebrew Joseph, shows us how deep Job felt about his life. Darkness, darkness and gloom. Behold, let that night be barren. Let no joyful shout enter it. Let those who pierce it, who, Arad, curse the day, who are prepared to rouse Leviathan. Job chapter 3, verse 7 through 8. This is such an interesting statement. Those who curse the day are essentially those who love the night, right? So he must be talking about vampires and werewolves, right? Well, not so much vampires and werewolves per se, but something far worse. Metaphorically, Job is addressing those who have given themselves to the night, those who identify themselves with the ways of wickedness. They are not afraid to rouse up the Leviathan. Jesus explains it as follows in John chapter 3, verse 19 through 20. This now is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, and men loved the darkness rather than the light, for their deeds were evil. For everyone who is now doing evil now hates the light, and does not now choose to come to the light, for fear that his deeds may be caused to be exposed. In John chapter 11, verse 9 through 10. Are there now not 12 hours in the day? If anyone may now walk in the day, he does not now stumble, because he now sees the light of this world. But if anyone may now walk in the night, he now stumbles, because the light is not now in him. I'm sure we all know people like this, right? They are those who believe that hell will be one big party, and they treat those who love the light as if they are beyond stupid. They're not afraid to rouse Leviathan. After all, they've given themselves to him. He is their father, the devil, and they want to do the desires of their father. The Leviathan. When you look up this word Leviathan, you get all sorts of descriptions. The notation in many Bibles or commentators refer to it as a mythical sea creature, and in others, the Leviathan is referred to as a large crocodile. In Jewish literature, Leviathan is said to be 300 miles in length, with brilliant light proceeding from his eyes. When he is hungry, he sends forth heat from his mouth that makes all the waters of the deep boil. And if he puts his head into paradise, no living creature could endure the odor of him. It is said that the fish that swallowed Jonah barely escaped being eaten by Leviathan, for he eats one whale a day. I mean, it's awesome what our imaginations conjure up when we address spiritual pictures, which are hard to understand. I've included in the transcript frescoes called The Last Judgment, painted by Giacomo Rosignolo, and other more common renderings of Leviathan. And despite the notations in your Bible, Leviathan is not mythical at all, because in Job chapter 41, God gives us an amazing description of this creature. He is described as perhaps the most fantastic creation in the heavenly realms, a bedazzlement of God's handiwork. In that chapter, Yahweh describes what can only be defined as an awesome dragon with smoke and fire coming forth from his mouth. The description is exactly like the images of dragons we find in the artwork of many cultures. Like a dragon, Leviathan is fearsome, unassailable by man or any other created thing. With this description, it leaves us with few choices in terms of identifying this creature. Not directly, but in a very poetic fashion. Leviathan is identified as none other than Lucifer, the devil. After a fantastic description detailing the dragon, the last two verses of Job 41 say, "Nothing upon the dust, or in the realm of man, the earth, nothing is like him, or is his equal, one made without fear. He looks on everything that is high. He is king over all the sons of pride." Job chapter 41, verse 33 through 34. With that description, let's connect the dots. Here is what we know. According to Genesis chapter 1:28, God has given dominion to man over all the beasts of the earth, the fish of the sea, the birds in the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. But since Leviathan is unassailable by man, and nothing in the realm of man is his equal, we can be pretty sure that we are getting a description of a heavenly being, some sort of angelic creature. In Isaiah chapter 27:1, Leviathan is likened to a serpent, a twisted serpent, and is described as the dragon who lives in the sea. As we learn from our study in Revelation, the sea is a metaphor or a picture of the restless masses of humanity. And in Job 1 and 2, we see that Satan spends his time roaming the earth, in effect, doing his business on the great seas, watching, studying mankind, and churning up those seas, creating chaos. Then in Ezekiel chapter 28, we find another fantastic description of Lucifer and the way God bedazzled him. And like Isaiah 27:1, he is again linked to the serpent, specifically the serpent in the Garden of Eden. This passage also gives substance to why he is called the king over all the sons of pride. Let's take a quick look at Ezekiel 28, verse 12 through 17. "You were the model of perfection, full of wisdom and exquisite in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Your clothing was adorned with every precious stone, red carnelian, pale green peridot, white moonstone, blue-green beryl, onyx, green jasper, blue lapis lazuli, turquoise, and emerald, all beautifully crafted for you and set in the finest gold. They were given to you on the day you were created. I ordained and anointed you as the mighty angelic guardian. You had access to the holy mountain of God and walked among the stones of fire. You were blameless in all you did from the day you were created until the day evil was found in you. Your rich commerce led you to violence, and you sinned. So I banished you in disgrace from the mountain of God. I expelled you, O mighty guardian, from your place among the stones of fire. Your heart was filled with pride because of all your beauty. Your wisdom was corrupted by your love of splendor. So I threw you to the ground and exposed you to the gaze of curious kings. Job 41, verse 34 says, Leviathan looks on everything that is high. He is king over all the sons of pride. His heart was so filled with pride and he was so full of himself that Isaiah chapter 14, verse 13 through 14, he makes all these audacious claims towards everything that is high. He believed he could take on Yahweh and supplant his role as judge and sovereign ruler over the hosts of heaven, over the angelic beings. He says, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of the assembly of the utmost height of the sacred mountain. I will ascend above the top of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High God. I mean, the arrogance of this created being, it knows no bounds. This king of the sons of pride literally convinced himself that with the work of his own hands, he can be like the Most High God. Tragically, this is the same boast humans make when they believe they can be good like God, with their own hands, the work of what they can do. Thankfully, it does not matter what Lucifer boasts. Yahweh will bring his boasting to naught, as he says in reply, nevertheless, you will be thrust down to Sheol, to the recesses of the pit. Eventually, Lucifer will be thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone, where he'll be tormented day and night, forever and ever. So much for Lucifer's pride. It's going to get him nothing but eternal despair. Still, just so you understand how mighty and unassailable this demon, this spiritual being is to anyone but his creator, which is Yahweh, even Michael the archangel was unwilling to confront him directly and dared not pronounce a railing judgment against him. We're told that when they argued over the body of Moses, that Michael said, Yahweh rebuke you. This is an indication, I guess, why it's foolishness for people to run around rebuking the devil. He's not afraid of you. In fact, he looks down on you. The only one he is terrified by is his master, Yahweh Sabaoth. Now, if Yahweh Sabaoth, translated in most Bibles as the Lord of Hosts or the Lord of Heaven's armies, has made his abode in you, then you can be assured that Leviathan, this dragon, the serpent of old, is terrified of Yahweh within you. Yahweh is where our protection comes, his life and ours, which is the design point of true Christianity. Now, to complete our understanding of this picture of a dragon, which is attached to the name Leviathan, Satan, is referred all throughout the book of Revelation as what? You got it, a dragon. And there's no need to make any guesses as to his identity. In Revelation 22, this dragon is specifically called out as the serpent of old, who is the devil and the Satan. Thus, we can say with a lot of confidence that this reference to Leviathan, who was in Eden, the garden of God, is speaking of the angelic being Lucifer, who abandoned his rightful place as the light bearer and who has been consumed by darkness and lies. When we get to Job 41, I think you'll be awestruck by the description God gives of this dragon. It has the same feeling as his description of Lucifer's beauty and might in Ezekiel 28:12 through 17, just in a more dark and creepy way. Let's get back to Job. Again, Job said, behold, let that night be barren. Let no joyful shout enter it. Let those pierce it who arad, curse the day, who are prepared to arouse Leviathan. Job is so upset, he says, let all the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places, and let the people who love darkness and hate the light, those who are so beholden to their evil that they're willing to call forth the Satan, speak a curse, arad, against the day of his birth. I mean, this is quite the damnation. Job is not just angry about what is happening to him. He's like furious beyond reason. I mean, let the stars of his twilight be darkened. Let it be forced to wait for light, but have none. And let it not see the breaking dawn, because it did not shut the doors of the belly, or be caused to hide trouble from my eyes. Job chapter 3, verses 9 through 10. To Job at this moment, the day of his birth evokes such a loathsome thought. He wishes he would have never been born, and that this day would be punished for letting him live. This phrase about the doors of the belly is a poetic way of speaking of his mother's womb. Let's see what else he said in Job chapter 3, 11 through 19. Why did I not die from the womb, come forth from the belly and expire? Why did the knees receive me, and why the breast that I should suck? For now I would have lain down and been quiet. I would have slept. Then I would have been at rest with kings and with counselors of the earth who rebuilt ruins for themselves, or with princes who had gold, who were caused to fill the house with silver, or like a miscarriage, which is discarded. I would not be as infants that never saw light. There the wicked cease from raging, and there the weary are at rest. The prisoners are at ease together. They do not hear the voice of the taskmaster. The small and the great are there, and the slave is free from his master. This is a powerful expression of hopelessness and despair. But it does teach us truth about the afterlife, or more accurately, half of the truth. You see, not everyone rests when they die, for the wicked are never at rest. Only those who are deemed to be righteous experience the rest Job is talking about. Job fancied himself one of those who would spend his death at rest, and he longed for it. He was not afraid of death, and he preferred it to the suffering he was enduring. The truth about Sheol. We know from Jesus' story in Luke chapter 16, verse 19 through 31, that the dead just don't sleep in peace, and the wicked do not cease from raging. In fact, the wicked are never at rest. Jesus once spoke of a poor, destitute man named Lazarus, and a rich man who lived in splendor every day of his life joyously. Much like Job, Lazarus, however, was covered with sores, such that even the dogs were coming and licking his wounds. Daily, he lay at the gate of this rich man, and he longed to be fed with the crumbs falling from the rich man's table, but he got none. Jesus explains that both men died, and they descended to Sheol, or Hades, the place of the dead. Lazarus went to the part of Sheol called the bosom of Abraham, and was comforted and was at rest, whereas the rich man went to the other half of Sheol, that is more adequately described as hell, a place of unending torment. The rich man could see Lazarus in the bosom of Abraham and asked his forefather Abraham, who seems to be overseeing the affairs of Sheol, to let this poor man come over to his side of Sheol in order that he, Lazarus, may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool off his tongue, for he was in agony and flames. I mean, the arrogance of this man, even in his state of anguish, he still looked at Lazarus as being no better than a servant who should come and care for his needs. Aside from the audacity of the rich man, the point is that neither of these men were asleep. And the rich man was not at rest. To him, death was not the blessed hiding place to avoid the terrors of this world. Nor was it some big wild party with his friends, with music blasting and libations for all. It is true, the small and great are there, and the slave is free from his master. However, the experience of the afterlife all depended upon which side of Sheol a person inhabited. Think of Sheol as a holding place for the dead, where in the bosom of Abraham they are kept and comforted, the righteous, until they are free to be with Jesus. Yet in hell, those who are there are imprisoned and tormented until they are dispositioned to their eternal habitation, which is the lake of fire. In Matthew 12, verse 40, Jesus said that after his death, he would spend 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the earth. It is understood from Psalm 16, verse 8 through 11, and 1 Peter 3:19, that he went down to Sheol, also known in Greek as Hades, the place of the dead. The scriptures declare that Jesus was not abandoned to Hades, nor did his flesh suffer any decay due to his death. So, what was he doing there? Jesus went forth to call out of the bosom of Abraham, all the people who had died in faith, believing and betting their life on Yahweh. Even those who we're told were rebellious, for instance, Abraham, Jacob, Samson, David, he brought them with him to heaven, to their eternal habitation. He literally set the captives free. For these people were a gift from the Father to the Son. You see, prior to the cross, no one could enter heaven. No one could be in the presence of God, for their sin had yet to be atoned or washed away. Thus they were safely kept and preserved by their faith in a place of comfort until Christ would ascend to his Father. They were imprisoned, so to speak. They were not free, but they were comforted, and they rested as they waited for their time of their release. Jesus knew that upon his death he would descend to Sheol, which is why Jesus told the thief on the cross, "Truly, I now say to you, today you will in the future choose to be with me in paradise." While there, Jesus revealed himself to all the prisoners. To those imprisoned in the bosom of Abraham, he proclaimed that he was the object of their faith, that he is Yahweh. To those imprisoned in hell, he proclaimed that they had rejected him, that they had rejected Yahweh, their source of salvation. When Jesus ascended into heaven, he emptied the bosom of Abraham and all the righteous and led, as we're told, captivity captive. He redeemed them from the realm of the dead and took them to be with him in heaven, the realm of the living. On the other side, hell, the place of torment and agony and flames, there is no rest for the wicked in death. As for the people who are now believing and betting their lives on Yahweh, just like a little child who depends on Yahweh for all things all the time, which is the definition of faith, expressed as the assurance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. When they die, they do not go to Sheol, but are immediately brought into the presence of God in the heavens, where they join the saints of old who once occupied the bosom of Abraham. So while Job expressed his desire to die and to simply find rest, you now know that death is only something to be desired if you have lived by faith in Yahweh, if you know his name and bet your life on his name. Still, Job clearly made his point. His life sucks, and he would rather die and join those in the bosom of Abraham than live and suffer mercilessly. Well, let's stop here, and we'll pick back up next week with the agony of it all. I'm glad you tuned in and have been ready to listen. To get a free download of the full written transcript with all the scripture references footnoted, please go to threshermediagroup.com. That is THRESHER mediagroup.com. This is Steve with Thresher Media Group. When you're ready to listen, tune in.